from Sri Lanka, who is here to hand over our recommendations to the adult leaders and institutions who are helping to amplify the voices of children and young people in the campaign to end child labor. And of course, we also have our support group, which is our group of translators. And of course, I think I've seen a lot of chats. There are a lot of people already in this Zoom, and I am so glad that you gave your time to be with us here today. And I can see that there are a lot from different countries, and you are welcome to use the chat to say only your first name and the country you are joining this meeting from. So as we hear from various speakers, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions. So we are actually monitoring the chat, and please remember to keep the chat safe, respectful, and considerate. And if you use your names, please use your first name only. So I encourage everyone to edit your nicknames. And then to clarify, we have the translator button so that you can actually understand well what we are going to talk about for today's session. And once again, warm welcome to everyone online. So let us give a round of applause, a silent round of applause to welcome our speakers. And here is the instruction for the translation. And as you can see, you have the setting on under. You can see the interpretation, and you can choose accordingly. You can choose the Sinhala for Spanish, Tamil, Urdu, Nepali, Hindi, Bengali, and English. So, okay, I think everyone has followed through very well. So now, to start, we will now hear a testimony about child labor from a young person from Sri Lanka. So, before we play the video, so please cast your eyes on the screen.
எனது பெயர் கிறிஸ்டோபர் தென்ஸ்லி. எனது வயது 22. நான் சென்கும்ஸ் தோட்டத்தில் வசிக்கின்றேன். கடந்த 2016ஆம் ஆண்டு எனது ஓயலினை நிறைவு செய்ததும் நான் வேலைக்கு செல்ல வேண்டிய நிலை ஏற்பட்டது. காரணம், எனது குடும்பத்தில் 6 உறுப்பினர்கள். எனது தாய் மாத்திரம் வேலை. தாயின் ஊதியத்தால் எனது குடும்பம் இயங்கியது. எனது குடும்பத்தின் வறுமை நிலை காரணமாகவே நான் வேலைக்கு செல்ல வேண்டிய நிலை ஏற்பட்டது. நான் வேலைக்கு செல்லும் காலங்களில் எனது நண்பர்கள் என்னை பார்த்து குறையும் கேலியும் பண்ணினார்கள். ஆனால் நான் அவர்களிடம் கூறியது, எனது உயர்கல்வியை தொடர வேண்டுமானால் அது எனது முயற்சினாலே முடியும் என்று கூறி அதில் நான் திருப்தி அடைந்தேன். பின்பு எனது அண்ணனின் உதவியுடன் எனது உயர்கல்வியை முடித்தேன். உயர்கல்வியை முடித்ததும் மீண்டுமாக நான் வேலைக்கு செல்ல வேண்டிய நிலை ஏற்பட்டது. காரணம், எனது உயர்கல்வியின் படிப்புக்காகவும் எனது தம்பியின் படிப்புக்காகவும் நான் வேலைக்கு செல்ல வேண்டிய நிலை ஏற்பட்டது. வெல்விஷன் நிறுவனத்தின் மூலமாக உயர்கல்வியின் முக்கியத்துவத்தை நான் நன்கு அறிந்து கொண்டேன்.
Okay, so I think everyone has heard the testimony from Danny Seeley. It was actually a story of Danny Seeley. But before we proceed, I think I will remind everyone for our safeguarding policy. So shall we go, before we proceed to our speakers, I would remind everyone to I encourage everyone that if you feel uncomfortable, please do ask we have our facilitators here, and you can feel free to actually open up. And at the same time, you are very encouraged to participate, but also on the safe side. And we encourage everyone to not share any information such as name, complete name, address, media account to people that you do not know. And of course, at any given time, if you feel uncomfortable, you can feel free to inform your adult mentors, and you will be assisted right away. And of course, I encourage everyone to be mindful of your statements in the chat box, and of course, to respect each other's opinions. Okay, please let us proceed. Now, I would call on Yvonne to have the handover of the CYP's recommendation by Ms. Yvonne, our female young people, to Mr. Nalaka Siriwardena, our co-chair of NACG Sri Lanka.
Hello to all of you. I am Yvonne from Sri Lanka. I grew up around tea estates. I am grateful to my parents who struggled and managed to send me to school. But I also, some of my friends go to our national capital to look for jobs to support the family. And some others were trafficked. Interestingly, we also saw children from the capital looking for jobs on tea estates. Today, I am continuing my education, while many of my friends cannot. So, it is an honor for me to represent the children of South Asia, asking you to take our recommendations to the government. We join you in requesting them to take quick and long-lasting steps to end child labor in Sri Lanka and the region. These recommendations were made by us during We Speak Children and Youth Consultation held in August 2022. Around 69 people aged 14 to 24 drafted these recommendations together. Together, we had 5 broad recommendations. Firstly, children need better access to an education that sets them up for life. We believe education is important to eliminate and prevent child labor as it equips with relevant livelihood skills that lead to meaningful work opportunities. We must be provided with quality education, ensure access to education even in remote areas and for specific vulnerable groups such as children with disabilities. Education must be made compulsory as well as vocational education and career guidance opportunities also must be provided. Secondly, the most vulnerable in any community need better social protection. We believe they need improved access to social protection for marginalized and vulnerable families, including access to livelihood opportunities to reduce the effects of extreme poverty which push children into child labor. Thirdly, we as children should be involved in policy decisions that will affect our lives. We hope you see that is critical to include our voices as young people and letting us play role in the overall framework to put an end to child labor. Hearing our experience and expecting are key aspects of formulating effective policies and turning this into actions. Our fourth recommendation is to establish stronger partnerships of all stakeholders who have our best interest in mind. We know that effective partnerships between government and civil society organizations is crucial to eliminate child labor. Both their roles are critical. Governments review policies, implement laws, enforce them, allocate budgets. Civil society organizations play a key role in advocating on child rights and raising awareness on child labor among different stakeholders. Lastly, we have heard too many hollow promises. We recommend implementation and action of existing and new commitments. At family level, it is important to move from awareness creation to facilitating the adoption of various strategies to eliminate child labor. This includes enabling access to social protection, financial assistance, improved access to livelihood opportunities for parents. We believe both governments and civil society organizations need to forge effective partnerships to translate this to action on the ground. This is not just my voice. I hope you can hear the voices of the children of South Asia echoing with mine. On behalf of them, I now hand over these recommendations to NACG, expecting that you will present them on behalf of us in the upcoming South Asia Regional Conference, which will taking place in Nepal to develop the action plan to eliminate child labor. We can end child labor. With your help, our victory will come sooner, and we can save entire generations of children who deserve to be in schools but are at work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for sharing us the recommendations. Now I call on Mr. Nalaka Siwardena for the thank you and commitment to CYP. For the handover, I call on again Ms. So, Mr. Nalaka, you can give your thank you remarks on behalf of SAIEVAC and NACG collaboration.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's fun. Thank you very much and good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Yvonne for her very strong, comprehensive, but very clear message that says a lot about how children think and what children want in their future. And also, I would take this opportunity to thank everyone, every children and young people who took part in this very important consultation process across South Asia. And NACG is always committed to bring children and young people voice in forefront of the issues that we discuss, related to the issues that children and young people are facing, because we believe that they are very important actors in finding solution to the issues that they face. We as NACGs will take this recommendation very seriously, and each and every recommendation that you would have came up with will be presented in the upcoming regional South Asia Regional Conference, on which we'll try to discuss and try to find solution on the issues related to the child labor and how we really eliminate child labor in the region. And we will not stop from there. We will be using this material, the important outcome of this process, and make sure that all the important stakeholders will hear your voices, your recommendation, and your concerns. Finally, let me also thank again children and young people who took part in this very important consultation process. as well as all the others who facilitated this process and deliver this very important outcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yvonne and Mr. Nalaka. I do believe that Ms. Yvonne carried the voices of the young people also across Southeast Asia. And I also thank Mr. Nalaka for accepting those recommendations and giving us assurance that those will be in good hands and will be echoed through different adult leaders as well. So now, we will welcome our keynote speaker. He is the Director General, Governing Board Member and Member Secretary of SAIEVAC and CRC Committee Member. Let us put our hands together for Dr. Richen Choppa.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, you can be heard. Yes, you are audible,
Okay.
Dr. Richen.
I believe I should start off with an apology for some confusion with my timing. I, believe that the timing I had in mind and the timing actually was communicated to me later. I think there has been some confusion. So I was waiting without realizing that the event has started. But nevertheless, I believe all the key stakeholders and key individuals are present in the conference. I did manage to catch what Yvonne and Nalaka presented. So thank you very much. I believe that does give me an idea as to what is being put on the table and what is expected from the SAIEVAC Regional Secretariat and SACG when we meet in Kathmandu in December for the regional consultation. Now, from SAIEVAC side, I would like to underline that child participation and the critical importance of reaching out to children in terms of the work we do and ensuring that there is a very clearly defined and established, approved, endorsed, and mainstreamed child participation policy is core to the work of SAIEVAC. And as you know, right from the start of the SAIEVAC movement, one of the efforts we have put together is to clearly define how we are going to consult children, how we are going to listen to children, how to bring children together, even to the extent of defining procedures and policy matrices, policy metrics in terms of how selection procedures for children are to be undertaken by the participating SAIEVAC countries in South Asia. And I'm happy to inform those who are not aware that we have 7 policy documents related to children's participation, which have been endorsed up to the ministerial meeting. And for any SAIEVAC regional conference or regional event, for that matter, even at the national level, those policy documents are referred to and applied. Now, how did, if one is to ask, and that is a question I get asked very frequently from not just children, but also other stakeholders, both at the national, regional, and global level. How do SAIEVAC apply these policy documents in terms of providing tangible and visible participation of children in the SAIEVAC processes? Well, the SAIEVAC governing board, we have, first, I think it is important to mention that SAIEVAC is the only intergovernmental platform in the world that has civil society, which is NACG, children, and SACG, which is the UN INGO platform, represented on its governing board. And in terms of the children, we have 4 children who participate in every SAIEVAC governing board meeting. We have 2 children who are full-fledged board members, who have equal voting rights, and who also, participate very actively in the discussions that take place. Followed, and these 2 children are accompanied by 2 other children who are observers. So the selection of children, of course, go by alphabetical rotation of countries, and this is actually institutionalized in the SAIEVAC processes. So we have 8 governing board members, we have 8 government representatives, we have 2 NACG and 2 observers from NACGs, we have the SAIEVAC Director General, we have the SACG chair, and we have 4 children, 2 full-fledged and 2 observers who sit on the governing board. So which gives children an equal and meaningful role in terms of the discourses and decision-making for the SAIEVAC mechanism. So that's one. But more importantly, I think one of the challenges which have been also quite visible and which has been, concerns have been raised about it is how do we now meaningfully on the ground consult children? And whether we like it or not, the reality is that most of the time we do not have the type of resources required to have meaningful opportunities to consult children. But this time, for the process which SAIEVAC and ILO and SACG initiated for the review process of the Regional Action Plan to End Child Labor in South Asia, which is the current one is 2016 to 2021, which was approved during the South Asia launch of the SDG 8.7 in 2016 July in Bhutan in a high-level conference. This regional action plan expired in 2021, and we actually initiated the process of review and readaptation of the regional action plan and to come up with whatever is required to input and strengthen the regional action plan. And the process that we are now going through is part of that exercise, which will hopefully by 2023 we'll have the new regional action plan to end child labor in South Asia. And for that, we had full consensus among the organizing entities that we need to create a vibrant process of consulting children, hearing children's voices, and bringing children's recommendations to the table so that we can then not only incorporate the recommendations into the main body of the regional action plan, in the relevant sections, but also produce a separate report of the children's recommendations so that we have 2 documents which strengthen the work of ending child labor in South Asia as we move forward. Now, as we move towards, as the countdown has already started for the regional conference in South Asia, for the child labor conference in South Asia, which is taking place in Kathmandu, Nepal, from December 15th to 16th. I think it's important for me to report to the children who are participating here. We are at an advanced stage of now preparations. I have now been in active communication with all the 8 countries of South Asia. I have more or less finalized everything for government of Nepal, for Bhutan, for Sri Lanka, for Maldives. Hopefully, I'll be able to sort it out in the next few days. Afghanistan, I have now reached out to the de facto Taliban government through UNICEF Afghanistan. We have more or less lost the previous institutional mechanisms in Afghanistan, but I'm making an effort to see that the de facto government in place and hopefully through UNICEF Afghanistan, we'll be able to find a way of bringing Afghanistan, involved in the discourse in Kathmandu in December. So the work is at an advanced stage of preparations, and I do believe that things will go smoothly without any hiccups. The exciting part of that regional consultation, to me, as the Director General of SAIEVAC, who is actually the custodian and the anchor responsible to drive the regional action plan to end child labor forward, are three things. One is that the regional consultation is the first in-person conference where SAIEVAC mechanisms will come together face-to-face and discuss and give us not just an opportunity to talk about child labor, but also to reunite, recommit, and consolidate our efforts to move the SAIEVAC movement forward in partnership with key entities, which include not just SACG, but also other key stakeholders. The other part is that we will be able to, finalize and produce the very final draft of the regional action plan, 2023, 2028, 29, whichever the conference recommends, which will then go to the 9th SAIEVAC Governing Board meeting and the 5th SAIEVAC Ministerial meeting, which is now seriously being pursued by me to be held in 2023. The third component is that we are not going to only hear from children and children's representatives in the conference, some in person and some online, but we'll also be able to put together a very good and very clear and precise recommendations from children, directing us in terms of how we move forward the agenda to end child labor in South Asia. So I'm going with I'm pursuing these processes for the regional action plan with this excitement. And I'm hopeful that we will, at the end of the regional conference and regional consultation in Kathmandu, achieve all that I'm putting on the table today. It is also important for me, I think, before I run out of time, to also thank the colleagues in World Vision and other SACG, NACG colleagues who worked together to build this children's consultation together over a now significant period of time, and also worked together to establish this particular online consultation to hear from children. I believe these are important evidences of how South Asia and South Asian entities actually take or put efforts to consult our children, hear from our children, and use children's voices to strengthen our work in terms of ending violence against children in general, and of course, this time for ending child labor in South Asia. I believe in the agenda there is also provision for question answer session, and I welcome that offer for me to respond to any queries our young friends may have. But let me end by thanking the SACG leadership, the SACG agencies, and NACG for this, and of course World Vision colleagues for taking lead in this very important consultative process with children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen, for actually highlighting to us the importance of child and youth participation in terms of policy making. And I do acknowledge, especially, and you've mentioned that there is really direct involvement of young people in the organization. And it's very refreshing to hear that, because as we all know, child participation is really very important. And thank you very much for highlighting that to us. And again, The floor is very open for questions, but I received a question from the chat. You can use, to clarify everyone, you can use the Q&A to actually type in your question so that it can easily be acknowledged. So Dr. Vincent, the first question is, it is from an attendee. How can we fully stop child labor? Again, the question goes, how can we fully stop child labor?
Well, I think if you look at larger global, regional, and national policy frameworks, starting from the SDGs down, I believe there are significant efforts to address the issue of child labor. Besides ILO and its very crucial conventions, we also have all other UN and INGO bodies with special focus on addressing issues of child labor. But we also continue to have, in the recent past and now still, in the, challenges that we confront with the COVID pandemic, how it derailed, significantly all the efforts that has been invested in addressing issue of child labor. But one of the most important factors, I think, as we move forward is to ensure that, we have very clearly defined consultative processes with the government to ensure that, some of the key elements of what children are now putting on the table are placed to the governments, and to ensure that the governments take it seriously, to ensure that governments invest meaningfully in terms of not just resources, but policy and institutional frameworks to address child labor, and also create, opportunities, both economic and livelihood opportunities for children and young people to be able to, protect and promote their own opportunities in life. But one of the key critical elements that continues to remain on the table, which remains a high priority, but which remains continuously as a huge challenge, is also the issue of compulsory free education. And I think that is also something which I continuously hear from children. I continuously hear this dialogue at the global level. We talk about it continuously in the UN CRC committee. And this is an area, I think, that needs to be, put on the table as a high priority, so that we have a mechanism whereby all children are accounted for, all children are having access to education, all children are being equipped with the necessary, skills, education and skills to be able to lead a life that can move them away from harmful environments where they are subjected to, child labor. Investing in the economic opportunities, investing in community development, strengthening family, capacity to take care of children, definitely are central to all the discourses we are having. But I'm looking forward to all the recommendations the children would have put this time. And I'm sure in the regional consultation, we'll be able to discuss this with the government mechanisms. And I assure you, there are very senior government functionaries who are coming to Kathmandu for the regional consultation from the countries. And hopefully, as we move forward post-pandemic, I think we'll be able to address them more strategically and stay focused in terms of monitoring the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Renchen. Yes, indeed. The problem of child labor is such a widespread problem, and it really takes a lot of effort in order to end it. And thank you for that. And I do believe that individual efforts would help as well in contributing to end such problem. And now we have another question. We know from available data that there are gender biases in education, domestic work, and unpaid care. How do you think this impacts child labor norms and practices? And what can be done to mitigate or eliminate consequences for those affected the most? Again, the question is quite long, but I will read the question again. We know from available data that there are gender biases in education, domestic work, and unpaid care. How do you think this impacts child labor norms and practices? And what can be done to mitigate or eliminate consequences for those affected the most?
Yeah, like you said, the question is long. The answer is not easy. And I believe it also involves a lifetime work in terms of addressing this. Yesterday, 25th November, we all celebrated the 16 days activism and ending or eliminating violence against women and girls. And I was involved in a huge celebration in Bhutan in terms of the day. And many of the issues which you are bringing, or which actually the question raises, were also discussed there, right? Now, if you look at the gender biases or gender differences or gender gaps in the education sector, well, I think it depends, which country you're talking about, which region you're talking about, and which classes or levels of education you're talking about. In fact, in Bhutan, if I give an example of Bhutan, there are more girls in schools than boys. The ratio of girls and boys have now turned completely different. As always, you hear that girls excel better in education. But the tragedy is also that many girls drop out after high school, either because they are subjected to the traditional harmful practices of either child marriage or caring system. And therefore, I think the challenges remain the same. The dynamics continue to remain the same. And the investments probably do not match the type of challenges we are referring to. So I think that is one of the areas that I think we need to talk about. I have always continuously raised the issue of, ensuring that, the gender dimensions in child labor actually needs to be understood a little more clearly. We continuously talk about that the level of child labor, the indicators show that there is a dip. But on the other hand, we do not take into account that there are contributing factors like child marriage, which anyway is, to me, tantamount to slavery. It's basically child labor. So therefore, I think we need to understand how all these dynamics work together to address this whole issue related to child labor. Many of the governments are upset because the indicators or the criteria used for child labor actually do not differentiate gainful, meaningful employment or work children contribute for family during holidays or during off times. But there is only a thin line to that. So therefore, I think it is not as clear, and I think it will require a little definitely much more time to dissect and understand and discuss this issue. But definitely, I think it is important that we need to focus on the more vulnerable segments of our children. Women, girls definitely are subjected to more, hazardous, not just hazardous forms of labor, but also in terms of the amount of, work girl children are subjected to in terms of the care, in terms of work in the family, also in terms of, other practices that impact girls more than boys. So it's not, very simple question. but I'm sure this will come into discussion in the regional consultation. There is a need to clearly understand the gender dimensions of child labor and how do we address that and how do we include that in the policy formulations or strategic interventions which we undertake, whether it is from the government or NGOs or UN NGOs who actually invest into addressing these issues.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Renchen. And unfortunately, due to the shortage of time, we cannot cater more questions, but still do feel free to type in your questions on the Q&A chat as it will be addressed as we have different speakers and they will reply to you. Please feel free to still continue on your questions. And thank you very much, Mr. Renchen, for actually sharing some of your knowledge, though I do believe that the question is quite long and it's a very broad topic and it needs a lot of time to be discussed. So, but still, you still provided us with an ample answer to that question. So now, proceeding to the next part, we have a testimony from Nepal, Amrit, male young people. We have a story of Mr. Amrit through video testimony. Now we will hear his story.
यहाँ उपस्थित सबै महानुभावहरूलाई मेरो नमस्कार। मेरो नाम अमृत रोका मगर हो। मेरो गाउँ चाहिँ रुकुम जिल्ला हो। म अहिले हाल चन्दनगीमा बस्छु। जब आजभन्दा 6 वर्ष अगाडि हामी यहाँ काठमाडौँ आएका थियौँ। मेरो बुवा मेरो परिवार हामी आएका थियौँ काठमाडौँ कामको सिलसिलामा। त्योभन्दा अगाडि हाम्रो गाउँमा धेरै आमदामी थिएन। सिजन अनुसार उत्पादन हुने तर अरू बेला चाहिँ उत्पादन हुने थिएन। त्यसबेला हामी यहाँ काठमाडौँ आएका थियौँ र काठमाडौँ आएपछि त्यतिखेर यहाँ आउँदाखेरि रातिको 12 बजेको थियो होला। मलाई हल्का अचम्म पनि लाग्यो। त्यतिखेर मेरो गाउँमा यहाँको जस्तो विकास पनि थिएन र यहाँको जस्तो गाडीको पनि देखिन्थेन थिएन। अनि हल्का अचम्म पनि लाग्यो। त्यसपछि यहाँ आएपछि मेरो बुवा र मम्मी यहाँ इटा उद्योगमा काम गर्न थाल्नुभयो। त्यसपछि मैले यहाँ उहाँ गाउँमा उनीहरूले 5 क्लासमा पढ्दै गरेको थिएँ। बिचमा मेरो पढाइ रोकियो अनि त्यसपछि मैले यहाँ आएर बुवा मम्मीसँगै सानोतिनो काम गर्थेँ र सानोतिनो काममा सहयोग गर्थेँ र त्यसपछि यहाँ ओल्ड भिजन इन्टरनेसनल नेपालका सरहरू र बाल विकासका समाजका सरमिसहरूले मेरो भर्ना गरिदिनु भयो स्कुलमा। र त्यसपछि मैले पढाइमा निरन्तर अगाडि बढाएँ र स्कुलमा चाहिने जति पोसाक लुगा कपी किताब जस्ता सामानहरू पनि मलाई वितरण गर्नुभयो। त्यसले अझ मलाई सहज भयो र त्यसले गर्दाखेरि मैले अहिले एसी दिएर बसेको छु। र कोरोना जस्तो महामारीको बेलामा पनि उहाँले खाद्यान्न जस्तो सामानहरू दिनुभयो जसले गर्दाखेरि अझ परिवारमा आर्थिक अवस्थामा अझ सहज भयो। त्यसले गर्दाखेरि मैले विद्यालयमा पढ्दै गर्दा विद्यालयमा मैले विभिन्न बालक्लबमा सहभागिता लिएँ र त्यहाँ बसेर सदस्य पनि भएँ र विभिन्न बालबालिकाको हक हित र अधिकारको बारे जान्न पाएँ र अन्त्यमा यति मेरो जीवनमा परिवर्तन गरिदिनु भएकोमा ओल्ड भिजन इन्टरनेसनल नेपाल र बाल विकास समाज र धेरै आभारी छु र यहाँहरूको अमूल्य समय मलाई आदान प्रदान गरिदिनु भएकोमा पनि म धेरै आभारी छु। र अन्त्यमा मेरो यही सल्लाह छ आशा छ कि इटा उद्योगमा रहेका बालबालिका इटा उद्योगको समूहमा लागेका बालबालिकाहरूलाई नभएर मात्रै विभिन्न बाल सङ्गठनमा लागेका बालबालिकाहरूप्रति पनि हल्का ध्यान आकर्षण होस् भन्ने आशा छ। धन्यवाद।
Okay, so that was the story of Mr. Amoritz. Of course, we had some heavy topics, and child labor is really such a heavy topic for us to discuss. So now, of course, to lighten the mood a little bit, we will now proceed for a short quiz, and I hope everyone participate on this game. So it is also regarding a quiz regarding on child's rights. So I encourage everyone to type in your answers in the chat box, and for us to we encourage everyone to participate. Okay, so the first question we have. Okay, the first question is, how many children are engaged in child labor globally? Letter A, 152 million. Letter B, 160 million. Letter C, 178 million. So please type your answers in the chat box. You can write letter A, D, or so I can see a lot of answers, and all of you are saying that it's B. So the correct answer is letter B. It is 160 million. So it is a very huge number, considering that these children are going through a lot and are engaging in child labor. So this data is actually very unfortunate to hear as well. So we have our next question. For the second question, child labor is defined as work that is A, hazardous or dangerous. Letter B, too long, demanding many hours. Letter C, done by children who are too young. And letter D, any of the above. Okay, please type in your answers. So I've seen that there are a lot of you who answered letter C. So let us see the answer. Okay, the actual answer is letter B. Yes, it is any of the above. Child labor actually demands too long of work. It's not just about children who has in a young age and is engaged into work, but it is also, there are a lot of struggles with regards to child labor. For the next question, which industry has the most child labor in South Asia? Letter A, transport. Letter B, tourism. Letter C, agriculture. And letter D, manufacturing. So which industry is it? So the answer is letter C. So actually, there are a lot of, since South Asia is actually a tropical region, there are a lot of agriculture industry. So this is why there are a lot of child labor that is going through, or that is happening inside this industry. Now for the next question. Okay, true or false? Child labor only happens in 4 countries. Letter A, true. Letter B, false. Okay, again, true or false? Child labor only happens in 4 countries. Okay. The answer is false, because it does not pick a poor or a developing country. So the answer is false. For our last question. So who can take action to end child labor? So letter A, governments. Letter B, business. Letter C, children and other workers, and letter D, all of us. Okay, the correct answer is letter D, all of us. So each and every one of us here can have what it takes to actually help in ending child labor. So I do hope everyone that is here is more than willing to actually help and contribute in ending child labor. So thank you, everyone. And I'm happy that there are a lot who participated in our short quiz. And I hope you were refreshed, but at the same time motivated because of that. So now we proceed to our next part. I would now call on Ms. Insaf, a specialist on fundamental principles and rights at ILO. Mr. Insaf, the floor is yours.
Ness, thank you very much. With permission from Dr. Rinchin, with this SACG and SAIEVAC friends, NSCG friends, I would like to address the young people and children here. A very good morning and a very good afternoon to all of you. From these presentations, we have heard you well. We have heard your voice very clearly and loud. And we take those recommendations, each and every recommendation that you have presented seriously and wholeheartedly. That is the first promise that we can give you. In South Africa, 6 months ago, 5 months ago, we came together to discuss about eliminating child labor. Many countries came together, many stakeholders, many organizations came together, and children and young people were also there. They also came together. We all discussed and came out with a document called the Durban Call to Action, which spells out, which lists how child labor can be eliminated in all the sectors, in everywhere in the world, in all the regions. So first and foremost, from ILO, we promise that we will do our best to make sure that this Durban Call to Action is implemented. That is number one. It has 6 priorities and 49 immediate actions that have to be taken by different stakeholders, different parties, to make sure that there is no child labor in the world. So we in South Asia will take all what is relevant to South Asia to make sure that South Asia also becomes child labor free by 2025. We need commitment, we need resources, and we need action. And with all that, we also need that action to be collective, that all of us have to come together to take it forward. It's like a car having 4 wheels. All the 4 wheels have to turn at the same time. They have to go in the same direction, and they have to turn in the same speed so that the car can move. If the wheels are turned towards different directions, or if one wheel is faster than the other one or slower than the other one, nothing will happen. The car will not move. Eliminating child labor is also like that. We need everyone to participate, and we need everyone to walk in the same direction, agree and walk in the same direction. And ILO promises to bring everyone together to form that collective effort to make sure that everyone is together in this effort to eliminate child labor. And when I say everyone, ILO commits that children, the young people, are among those everyone. Their voices should be heard and will be heard. They should be part of the solution, and they will be part of the solution. ILO is also promising to help governments and all stakeholders to come up with national plans, to come up with regional plans to eliminate child labor. As Dr. Rinchin has mentioned, South Asia will have its own plan on how to eliminate child labor. And we as ILO, we will continue to help SAIEVAC, help the governments, help the other organizations, the civil society, to achieve this, realize these plans, to implement these plans. We as ILO will also take measures to collect the information coming from the government. What are the success stories? What are the lessons learned from our efforts? How can the lessons and experience of one country be used and can be beneficial to other countries? We as ILO will continue to study how best we can eliminate child labor and share that information. We will study and monitor how best some countries are doing, what good practices some countries or some organizations are doing, and share that lessons with others so that they can do the same or even better. So finally, and most importantly, as ILO, we are committed to making sure that young people are part of this journey and that their voices will be heard and their commitment will be mixed with all our commitments to eliminate child labor. You, as young people, will be part of future child labor conferences, like it happened for the first time in Durban. That was the first time, and it will not be the last time. In every forum, in every gathering, in one way or the other, as Dr. Rinchin said, sometimes resources are lacking, sometimes we don't have all that opportunity, but in one way or the other, children's voices, young people's voices, particularly those children and young people who have survived child labor, their voices will be heard and they will be part of the solution. So with that, I again reiterate ILO's commitment to eliminating child labor in South Asia and in the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Insaf, and also to ILO for really having your commitment in ending child labor in South Asia. So proceeding, I request everyone to cast your eyes on the screen as we will watch a video on child labor. This was done by the different children and young people across South Asia. And I encourage everyone to also type in your answers or your reactions rather regarding this video.
Namaste. Assalamualaikum.
Vanakkam.
Hello everyone.
என் நாட்டுல சிறுவர்கள் அதிகமாகவே தொழில் புரிவதை நான் பார்க்கிறேன். அவங்க மிகவும் அபாயகரமான தொழிற்சாலை வேலைகளிலெல்லாம் ஈடுபடுறாங்க.
In my country, children engaged in agriculture hard labor.
In my country, children are engaged in abusive domestic work.
In my country, children are engaged in exploitative entertainment work.
In my country, children are engaged in risky street-based works like begging.
Child labor steals a child's futures
and stops them from dreaming bigger.
அது அவர்களுடைய ஆரோக்கியம், பாதுகாப்பு என்பவற்றை தடுக்குது.
And they don't get to be the best versions of themselves.
தெற்காசியாவில் மட்டும்
There are 50 million children
engaged in child labor.
we, as the children, want to do something about this.
In fact, we are already doing something for this.
Over 60 child representatives from the 7 South Asian countries
recently came together in a consultation
to discuss solutions to child labor in our region.
Ending child labor.
ஒரு விழிப்புணர்வை ஏற்படுத்த தொடர்பான ஒரு நடவடிக்கை எடுக்கிறது பத்தி.
Then elimination of poverty.
After getting quality education.
நீதியை பிடிமதலாமங்கன் மக்கிரியும்.
And here are some of the actions that we urgently call for.
Government and non-government organizations
to actively support the prevention of child labor.
More platforms and places should be created for the children
to discuss issue of child labor directly with the government authorities
and be involved in the decision making as well.
Every country must have a well-functioning child helpline.
பாடசாலைகளில் இடைநிறுத்தப்பட்டவர்களை மீண்டும் பள்ளியில் சேர்ப்பதற்கு ஒவ்வொரு பள்ளியும் முன்வர வேண்டும்.
Every child and every parent must be taught the importance of education.
School curriculum should include financial literacy.
There should be a system to support families who struggle economically,
including access to and continuous support for vocational capacity build-up.
ஒவ்வொரு ஊடகமும் சிறுவர் தொழிலாளர்களுக்கு எதிராக குரல் கொடுக்க வேண்டும்.
Every child must be taught the harmful effects of child labor,
and all children must rally for against child labor.
Ending child labor is everyone's business.
No one should ignore it.
எந்த ஒரு வேலைத்தளத்திலும் சிறுவர்களுக்கான காலியிடங்கள் இருக்கவே கூடாது.
Because no child
is ever
old enough to work.
Okay, so recommendations were from across the 7 countries with the different children and young people across South Asia. And those are not just the voices of those young leaders, but also the voices of those children who are in need of our help. And those are actually the detailed recommendations that they have come up and the solutions that we must do in order to put an end to child labor. So it was very interesting on the first part because they have really stated how those different industry they
I'm sorry, I think we have lost Ness. This is your back-end host, Catherine. Now we would like to welcome our regional leader for South Asia and Pacific of World Vision International, Mr. Cherian Thomas. Over to you, Cherian.
Thank you. One of the risks of having to participate in a virtual platform is that we also deal with connectivity and technology challenges, which can sometimes occur at the most unpredictable moments. I'm sure that Ness will be back to join us. But till then, it is really so delightful to have seen young people and children almost leading this effort. It is really fitting that even as the world celebrates the 30th anniversary of the Conventions of the Rights of the Child this year, and in the month in which Children's Day is celebrated across the globe, it's really fitting that we are having this consultation at this particular point in time. I am really delighted as the regional representative of World Vision to be part of this program and to be able to in one sense, because of the grassroots level connect that we have as an organization to be able to help children's voices to be heard. One of the most important lessons we have learned in the last few years is that it is children's voices that need to be heard, and children's voices that need to be heard loud and clear. And that clearly means that the adults step back and just make sure that children have a platform to speak. And we saw that coming so clearly in the recommendations that the children made in that video that we saw, very clearly saying that, look, that is all that they need. Children have agency. Children know what they want. They are quite clear about what they want for their future. Their voices need to be heard. And I think that could perhaps even alter the very nature of public discourse. In a time when the space for civil society seems to be a little bit shrinking and threatened in some ways, I think it's really important to, rather than use very strident ways of conversation, it is to really let the most important stakeholder speak. And it is for the children to be able to make sure that their voices are heard by those who have the power. And I think that's really very important for children's voices to be heard. And that it becomes then a process of engagement with all relevant stakeholders, so that ultimately the whole problem that we are talking about, child labor here in the special instance, or all rights of children that otherwise seemed to be in more ways under threat than one issue, be it the problem of child marriage, of physical abuse, of sexual abuse, of different forms of exploitation that children face. I think it's really important that the voices of children are heard by those in power. And then when the voices are heard, people will be moved to act, moved to implement, moved to execute. And I think that should really be what we have to do. The question that I was asked to talk about is, what next? Where do we move from here? And I think in more ways than one, Dr. Ranjan Chopel addressed that. He said that this is not a one-time event. This is not a 5-year event or a 5-year process. This is a process of a lifetime. And I think we are going to, many of us, invest our lifetimes in trying to deal with any one or many, more than one of some of these issues that impact the well-being of children. And it's very important that we realize this, because it is not the quantum, it is not the number. It is still every last child on this planet is able to live life in the full. And that really for World Vision is its vision statement, a vision for every child, life in all its fullness. For instance, 160 million children is the estimate of children involved in child labor. That is 2% of the world population. And if we say that even the population of the world comprises 50% children, we are talking of 4%, and that's quite a big number. So it's really important that this issue is recognized and that we are able to deal with it seriously and in a very, very strategic manner. It's not that we have not been dealing with it. We've been dealing with it over the years. We have seen the numbers come down in many places. In South Asia itself, we have seen the numbers come down. COVID has certainly made things worse. But I think ultimately the problem has to be eliminated. The problems are related, as Dr. Ranjan brought out, the whole linkage between women, girls in child labor and the, girls dropping out of the workforce because they have a different form of bonding, moving away from organized workforce to working at home just because they are married early when they are children. So I think all these interrelated issues need to be looked at and dealt with. So yes, where do we go from here? We would go to the regional review time, the regional meeting for where various stakeholders would come together and review the regional action plan for ending child labor. What would it comprise? I think what Yvonne has shared in terms of the clear 5 very crystal clear recommendations and the 9 recommendations that emerged out of the video are very, very clear, crystal clear recommendations. Some of them are not new. Many of them have been emerging over the years. It's very important that these recommendations would really make it so much easy for all those who are involved to be able to understand what is it that children want, what is it that children are saying, and become the core components of this regional action plan. And I think that really is important. How do we engage? How do we go forward? I think the whole way is by, again, as it was mentioned, partnership. I think Yvonne, in a young, she is a very, very young person, but very wise words. in saying that, look, partnership is important. Partnership between government and civil society. Partnership between government and the private sector, who are ultimately the ones who employ children. Partnership with traditional communities. Partnership with parents, and therefore that focus on and linkage with education, making sure that children are able to go to school, make that the focus, make sure that social protection is so these are all interrelated issues, that parents have access to livelihoods. This working together, dealing with communities, dealing with community. And again, in the quiz, it came out very clearly, ultimately, who does it all lie with? It lies with all of us. If all of us are influenced, are people who are engaged in it, if all of us are part of these conversations, if all of us see ourselves as equal stakeholders in this process, if all of us participate meaningfully, not trying to blame anyone or shame anyone, but clearly all ultimately saying that we need to together make a difference. And I think children will bring that freshness into any conversation, and no one can stop hearing the voices of children. And I think that's really what we need to do. And therefore, where do we go from here? Hopefully to hear more from children, to engage more with children, to make sure that children are engaged in all these conversations. Children are engaged in conversations with governments, with the private sector, with others, so that and find champions who have been successful in eliminating this problem. Responsible people in different spheres, in different areas of life, coming together, getting together. And I think SAIEVAC is such a great platform for bringing all of them together with the NACGs, with the SACG, and with all of us individual CSOs to be able to come together so that this one issue of child labor and many other issues which deal with exploitation, violence in different forms against children can be ended. So that is our dream. That is what we hope for. That is the path forward. And that is where we all need to move. It's not going to be an easy path. It's clearly, ultimately, the matter lies in how well we can execute. Most of our countries have good laws and good policies. Some of them need to be sharpened. Some of them need more clarity. But most importantly, what we need to see is implementation. And again, that was something which Yvonne very clearly talked about, that ultimately it's all about implementation and action. So hopefully we will see all this as we engage more and more going forward. So all the very best to all our children who are here. It's in many sense your present world, it's your future world. And ultimately, our responsibility as adults is to make sure that children's voices are heard. And to that, we commit ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cherian. So I apologized earlier for I had got disconnected as we have electricity issues currently. But of course, thank you very much for that message, Mr. Cherian. And although this problem is big, I do believe that this will serve also, and I'm hoping that this will serve as our motivation to act together and act bigger than the problem that is at hand. So our program has come to an end, and we heard from energized children and young people, most of whom are using their lived experience to suggest positive and forward-looking solutions to child labor. We also heard from adults representing organizations committed to supporting children and young people in collaborative and mutually beneficial partnerships to end child labor. Let us go continue work together in the best interest of children and young people. Thank you once again, everyone, for your participation. We look forward to hearing the outcome of Southeast Asia Regional Action Plan and hope some of our recommendations will be incorporated. Goodbye, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. So once again, thank you for participating, and we do hope that these recommendations will put into action. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Ness. Very well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's one of those rare meetings that we see when everything is done so well on time. Thank you very much for leading it so well.
I second that. Thank you.